If I could ask you to take a seat, and we'll begin in just 30 seconds. My name is Jay Hine. I direct the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, and on behalf of President Bush, it's a terrific privilege to welcome you to the White House this morning. We're convened to discuss a very important subject, one in which each of you are in action. You're in very good company. We have 100 leaders or so of you assembled who care a lot about those who have served us in uniform. And as they return to their communities to find jobs, find homes, and find a new life, many of you on the front lines in those communities are helping that dream and hope be a reality. So we're indebted to you for such service, and we're pleased to gather you today to talk about how we can do more together. That is indeed the purpose of these roundtables. And the White House is a special place to have this conversation. It's a historic building you're in. The old Department of Navy, War, and State is now the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt, you may know, were Assistant Secretaries of the Navy, and they had offices in this building. Winston Churchill was here famously during World War II to plan strategy together. So many important conversations have been had in these offices, and important folks walk down these halls. But not any more important than the conversation we're going to have today, because our veterans who serve us so faithfully need the best that we have to offer them, of course. And the Faith-Based and Community Initiative of the President is designed to add some help, add some value to that cause. We have a center at the Veterans Affairs Agency, and you'll hear a bit about that today, so that we can design new partnership strategies with faith-based and community groups to enable us to reach further to solve these problems. We've increased partnerships with faith-based and community groups since the President's taken office, more than 250%, which we're very proud about. But there's so much more work to do, which is why we're here today. There are too many vets who are homeless, too many that lack adequate health care, too many whose employment prospects aren't just right today. So it's that sense of burden that puts us in these chairs and enables you to hear from so many of the innovators today that you'll hear from, who are making a big difference in philanthropy and in wise investment in these strategies, and from the field, who are performing best practices that we want to extend and expand. You'll hear from them today. You'll leave inspired, and hopefully you'll leave better connected with each other, so we can, again, do more together. Beyond financial resources, though, one of the ways we can help is to recruit and mobilize more volunteers, which nonprofits need and veterans benefit by. And one such volunteer you get to look at a picture here of while I tell just a brief story. President, in his 2002 State of the Union, called on all Americans to serve their country by serving neighbors in need in their communities. And one such volunteer who answered that call to service is a gentleman named Lou Brissy, who you're seeing as a young man and as his current status in Augusta, Georgia. Lou Brissy answered his nation's call to service following Pearl Harbor when he joined the Army. And he answered the President's call to service to be a volunteer later in life. He was actually a promising left-handed pitcher. Maybe some of you know Mr. Brissy's story. But he was a very talented left-hander. In pre-World War II days, Connie Mack, the famed Philadelphia Athletics manager, discovered him and signed him to a contract. He planned to go to college and then join the A's and strike out a bunch of major league hitters. But after Pearl Harbor, he thought he needed to answer a larger call. Found himself in the mountains of Italy and dug in for a month during the winter in a fierce battle. He was relieved one morning at 3 a.m. His unit was, and they got a hot shower and a meal and got refreshed coming back to the battle scene, and his truck was hit. 8 men were killed, and the blood coming out of his left boot made him fearful that he lost that left leg. As a left-handed pitcher, that's the leg that he pushed off the mound with. And so in a groggy state, he told the field doc, boy, anything you could do to save this leg would be a good thing. I'm a baseball pitcher. And it was shattered in 30 places. That wasn't normally what would happen. Amputation was normally what would happen. But But the doc did save his leg, and year and a half, a recovery through various hospitals. He made it. Came back. The leg was about 1.5 inches shorter than it was when he went to battle, but he had a leg. It was painful, but it still worked enough for him to join the Philadelphia A's and later some other teams. Made his major league debut in Yankee Stadium, pitched against Babe Ruth and others, and next season opened up against the Red Sox. Ted Williams hit a line shot up the middle, hit him on that left leg, screamed in pain. Ted Williams runs over to the mound and says, "You okay? What can we do?" And Brissy looks up to him and said, "Why didn't you pull it? Why didn't you pull it?" And he hit it right up the middle and became an all-star pitcher and just a remarkable career. He talked about the image of the GI, who kisses his wife, gets back, and settles into a happy life after service, that Polaroid image. And that wasn't his experience. He was depressed. He was lonely. Suffered from post-traumatic disorders, yet called fatigue back then. And so he gained a great heart for those like himself and dedicated his life of service then to others. So at the Veterans Facility, medical facility in Augusta, Georgia, he goes on metal crutches every day to talk to the young men who returned from field of battle even today. And hears their story, tells them his, and gives them a little bit of hope that on a weak leg he was able to have an all-star baseball career. Well, it was his dream to meet an American president. And in 1962, he thought he could realize his dream because he was named to the Presidential Council on Physical Fitness. Came to the White House. President Kennedy was out of the country that day, so he wasn't able to meet a president. We were contacted by an organization that knows Mr. Brissy, and today, this afternoon, Air Force One will be landing in Atlanta when the president makes some travel this afternoon. At the bottom of the stairs of Air Force One will be Lou Brissy. He's going to greet the president, and the president's going to issue him a Presidential Voluntary Service Award for his lifetime of service. So in his absence, why don't we applaud Mr. Brissy and so many like him, which are, again, a number of you in this room who serve so selflessly. And the Secretary of Veterans Affairs knows that very well. You're going to hear from him next. He is our keynote speaker this morning, and he is an ideal person to bring our signature message to you because Secretary Peake was nominated by President Bush following a distinguished career in the military. He's a U.S. military Academy graduate from West Point. He served with distinction in Vietnam, where he was awarded the Silver Star and Purple Heart, among other honors. He went on to medical school, ultimately becoming the Army's Surgeon General. Upon retirement from the military, he joined the nonprofit ranks, Executive Vice President and COO of Project Hope, nonprofit that served in more than 30 countries, extending compassionate health care. So he's been a distinguished military leader, a nonprofit leader, a surgeon, and a healthcare professional, and now he's leading the second largest agency in the United States government and the one that's principally responsible for serving those who served us in uniform. So without further delay, could you please join me in welcoming Secretary James Peake.
Thanks. See a number of old friends in the audience. It's good to see you. A lot of organizations that we already work with. Jay, I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate the chance to be with you. If there were any doubts when President Bush established the Department of Veterans Affairs Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, that government and faith-based and community organizations should and could partner together to do the right thing for our veterans, well, they're pretty well gone now. Today, VA provides more services to veterans, most in need, in more communities, thanks to our growing partnerships with nonprofit organizations, the Armies of Compassion, dedicated to housing the homeless, feeding the hungry, the jobless to work, easing troubled minds. The President's faith-based and community initiatives enable VA to engage America's nonprofits in addressing and meeting the needs of our veterans in the communities in which they live. It enables us to pool resources with grassroots service organizations in new, effective, and creative ways. I'm excited about what we've done, but more interested today in the potential of exploring what we can do in the future. I know all of us from the VA are eager to hear your ideas for partnership that will address our veterans' needs today, tomorrow, and into the 21st century. Meeting our nation's obligations to its military veterans is a big job, and I believe, frankly, it's more than a federal responsibility. That's why the faith-based and community initiative is important, and why partnering with organizations at all levels of community life is a big part of VA's blueprint for the 21st century. VA has a long and productive history working with grassroots organizations to do the right thing for our veterans. Since the end of World War II, VA has managed one of the largest volunteer programs in the federal government. Today, that program encompasses the work of more than 85,000 volunteers working side by side with VA employees in our hospitals, our national cemeteries, and our benefits offices. Behind them stand 65 major veterans, civic, and service organizations and more than 350 local nonprofit organizations. The faith-based and community initiatives build on that strong foundation of community support. We can now share federal resources in partnership with the nonprofit community, as well as continue to invite volunteers to support work within our system. This flexibility is crucial in meeting the new challenges by a changing population of veterans. A new generation of combat veterans is coming home, many bearing wounds that would have been fatal in prior conflicts. And they are now facing lifelong needs, taxing them and their families. Some suffer traumatic brain injury that medical science is only beginning to recognize, and many are dealing with that spectrum of post-traumatic stress. And while our Afghan and Iraqi combat veterans come to us in the early stages of their lives and their careers, Vietnam veterans, now the largest segment of our veterans populations, are entering into their later years, bringing with them chronic health needs and long-term concerns. Our veterans face many challenges, but I would say 4 significant ones tend to dominate VA's faith-based and community initiatives. Homelessness is one that Jay mentioned, transition to civilian life, community support for disabled veterans, and support of our hospitalized veterans. One of the greatest challenges that we share with our communities is this issue of homelessness. No citizen of this nation, particularly its veterans, should be homeless. We share that belief with faith-based organizations who have long led in assisting the homeless. Now we have the ability to join forces with them and provide VA resources and support local efforts. Our homeless provider grant and per diem budget supports 8,000 beds for veterans in faith-based and community service residential programs. These programs not only shelter veterans, but provide the structure and the services needed to deal with the conditions that lead to homelessness, unemployment, lack of education, physical and mental disability, and significantly substance abuse. Thanks to the faith-based and community initiative, VA now offers homeless veterans a continuum of care, identification and outreach, needs assessment, and coordination of services in a safe and positive set of environments. A new partnership with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, is an innovative collaboration between 2 federal agencies and local service providers. It provides homeless veterans vouchers, giving them access to VA medical care as well as housing and other community services through faith-based and community organizations partnered with HUD. The 2008 budget provides $75 million for about 10,000 vouchers, and the President proposes an additional 10,000 more vouchers in 2009 budget. As a result of these collaborative partnerships, the number of homeless veterans is dropping. 6 years ago, that number was estimated to be at 295,000 veterans homeless on any given night. Last year, we placed that number at 154,000. Still too many, but close to a 50% drop. A second faith-based community program focus is development of a smooth, seamless transition process for combat veterans returning from Afghanistan and from Iraq. Though their numbers is really small in comparison with the 5 million veterans treated in VA medical facilities across the board, their needs are complex and immediate. The fundamental changes we are making in VA and DoD procedures and policies to ensure their seamless transition for the military is shaping the VA of the 21st century. As part of these changes, such as unified electronic medical records, continuous case management, and simplified benefits application and processing, I envision a much closer work with community organizations, particularly to meet the lifelong challenges of these service members and their families, of these particularly most severely injured. Last month, I talked to our new federal recovery coordinators, charged them with connecting with our most seriously injured combat veterans and their families, cutting the red tape, and networking not only with DoD and VA services, but with the local community services needed to support the veterans and the family needs through a lifetime. This is where our newest generation of veterans is taking us, into their communities where our faith-based and community partnerships must grow to meet those needs. Our recovery coordinators, facility liaisons, and volunteer program managers are working to engage faith-based and community organizations in ways that complement VA services for these veterans. VA chaplains play a key role. They conduct half-day sessions for local clergy to give them information and resources needed to understand the physical, mental, and spiritual issues experienced by returning warriors and their families. They hold open houses in communities to provide nonprofits information on how to get involved with VA programs for returning veterans. The faith-based and community initiative has also stimulated community partnerships to build better, more stable lives for disabled veterans of all ages. In many cases, that means jobs. Our partnership agreement with national service organizations such as Goodwill Industries, the Salvation Army, and Easter Seals provides a vital link between job preparation and job placement. VA's goal is to provide all service-disabled veterans with the opportunity and encouragement to become employable and to get and keep good jobs. VA provides the training, skills, and support that they need to go to work, but the jobs have to come from the community. One more way where our faith-based and community organizations can significantly help. Our hospitalized veterans have long been the focus of community support coordinated through our traditional volunteer programs. Through voluntary services, VA partners with faith-based and community organizations augment VA staff in a variety of settings: hospital wards, outpatient clinics, rehab centers, end-of-life care. We could not provide the quality of care that we do without them. Our newest volunteer effort is in fact driven by our faith-based and community initiatives program. We are establishing community support programs at each of our polytrauma centers: Richmond, Tampa, Minneapolis, and Palo Alto. We are strengthening alliances in these communities with local service agencies and organizations to provide a support network for the veterans we treat for the most severe injuries and for their families who visit and accompany them through these long periods of care and rehabilitation, often far from homes. Providing support and care for family caregivers is vital, and it requires VA community partnerships. The need extends beyond what VA can do alone, and we turn to the communities of caring for partnership and assistance. As you meet today to explore and develop innovative and effective policies, programs, and partnerships to address the needs of American veterans, please take heart from the fact that the Department of Veterans Affairs seeks your guidance and your ideas. Thanks to the President's faith-based initiative, VA has the means, the authority, and the will to put your ideas to work to serve our veterans. You have some great panel members and some great panel leaders. Keith Etheridge from our chaplaincy, Pete Doherty, who is really world-renowned in terms of the issue of homelessness. I ask you to engage and to help us to find the way forward, because I think we can all be stronger by working together here. I hope you have a wonderful conference, because I know it's going to make a difference for our veterans, and I thank you very, very much for allowing me to talk to you today. Thank you.
We want to thank Secretary Peake for his leadership and leading us in the partnerships with our faith-based and community organization as we work together to provide care for nearly 24 million veterans here in the United States. My name is Keith Etheridge. I'm the Acting Director for Chaplaincy for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I will be your moderator for our first panel. And at this time, let me invite our panelists to join us here. We have with us today Laura Balland, who is Director of Voluntary Service for the Department of Veterans Affairs, Dr. Craig Dykstra, who is Senior Vice President of Religion for the Lilly Endowment, and we also have Catherine Dunlap, who is our Coordinator for the McGuire Outreach Ministry at Richmond. That's one of our polytrauma centers. And she is with the St. John's Episcopal Church in Richmond, Virginia. Let me call your attention to their biographical information, their biographies in your program. But at this time, we're going to go ahead and move forward with our program. Again, our first panel will be discussing the needs of our returning Afghanistan and Iraq veterans and how the VA and nonprofits are taking care of these needs and developing and implementing solutions and partnerships. The Department of Veterans Affairs National Chaplain Center and VA chaplains provide a natural link between the VA and the faith-based community. Every VA chaplain must have the endorsement of their faith group in order to serve our nation's veterans as a VA chaplain. VA chaplains are employed by the VA to provide spiritual and pastoral care to our wounded warriors and to conduct religious services in our VA chapels to ensure veterans have the opportunity to the free exercise of religion while receiving health care in our VA facilities that many times are miles away from their home communities. VA chaplains are also very actively involved as private citizens in local faith-based and church organizations, religious organizations. The National Chaplain Center is a partner with the VA Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives as we together serve those who have served. Faith-based and community organizations obviously have a vital role in caring for our returning warriors who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Today, approximately 800,000 veterans have left military service since January of 2002 and are now readjusting to civilian life. Of the 800,000 who have returned to civilian life, some 39% have obtained VA health care, which is about 6% of the 5.5 million veterans the VA provided services to last year, and that's in VA health care. At the height of the surge, the force in Iraq and Afghanistan consisted of nearly 51% Reserve and National Guard members. That's the first time in American history that we've had that high a percentage of Reserve and National Guard serving in the active force. When these Reserve and National Guard members return home and join those veterans who are now readjusting to civilian life, who will they turn to first when they experience distress related to their combat experiences? Our research tells us it will often be family, friends, community clergy, and faith-based and community organizations. The White House, the military services, the Department of Veterans Affairs are actively developing partnerships with our faith-based and community organizations to ensure the needs of our next greatest generation are not forgotten and that we offer them the support and help, including health care, that they obviously deserve. For example, last spring, the National Chaplain Center began the Veterans Community Outreach Initiative, sponsoring Clergy Day events around the country. Our purpose was to enhance the spiritual and pastoral care for our returning warriors and their families by providing education and resource literature to community clergy regarding the physical, the psychosocial, and the spiritual issues experienced by combat veterans. When veterans or their families come to these clergy in distress, we want our community clergy to be better able and prepared to provide appropriate counseling and to know how to make referral to the VA or the military health care providers. To date, the National Chaplain Center has helped to sponsor some 45 Educational Day events around the nation. We have given out approximately 2,500 packets of resource information on caring for returning warriors and their families. Participants in these Education Day events have mostly been local pastors, priests, rabbis, clinical chaplains, and even chaplain students. We've obviously seen a number of our lay ministers with our faith-based or parachurch organizations participating in these trainings. Also, almost all of these training events have included suicide prevention and suicide awareness training, and that's critical for our clergy and our pastors to know about. The National Chaplain Center has at least 10 more events scheduled in the near future, and more are being planned every day. Upcoming training events are scheduled to be held in Madison, Wisconsin, Danville, Illinois, Marion, Illinois, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Tucson, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, Chicago, Illinois, Syracuse, New York, and Darren Selnick just told me we want to have one in Minneapolis, Minnesota, probably in October. Of course, the National Chaplain Center is only one of many of our organizations making efforts to provide care for our returning warriors, and today it is indeed my pleasure to introduce you to our three panelists who will discuss the needs and practical solutions in caring for our returning warriors. And we'll ask Laura Ballin if she will begin, our Director of Voluntary Service. Laura?
Thank you very much. Good morning. How are you? I'm so glad that I could join you today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about VA voluntary service. The Secretary spoke a little bit about VA voluntary service, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about VA voluntary service, how volunteers are engaged, and what that means to the returning veterans. The VA voluntary service started about 62 years ago. Omar Bradley, who at that time was the administrator of Veterans Affairs or Veterans Administration, asked about 6 of the organizations to get together and see how it is that they could mobilize and provide service to veterans and their families that are coming back from World War II. Sound familiar? We're kind of in that situation today. And so volunteers and where we are today, we have about 85,000 volunteers that provide service to veterans. We probably started out with about 3,000 volunteers. And in the beginning, the volunteers provided service to veterans and their families in canteen service, and library service, and recreation service, providing entertainment, doing bingos. You've been participating in the infamous bingo games, I'm sure, and they still go on, but there are lots of other activities that are going on in addition to bingo games. Now volunteers are involved in virtually every assignment or every service involved in the hospitals and cemeteries and benefits. They are involved in canteen service, they're involved in recreation, as we said earlier. They are also involved in medicine, pharmacy, driving patients to and from their appointments, escorting patients to and from appointments. So there's a lot of things that volunteers can do. We are approaching providing opportunities for volunteers that go beyond the walls, the bricks and mortars of our hospitals. We are going into the communities. A lot of these activities that I'm going to speak of are not new activities, like golfing. That's not a new activity. Kayaking, that's not a new activity. But these are certainly activities that the veterans that are coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan are very engaged in. They want those high-risk type of activities. I went to Augusta probably about 2-3 weeks ago, and I'm sorry to say I did not get a chance to meet Lou. I'm sorry that I was not able to meet him. But these volunteers, the intent of the trip was to involve or to train volunteers. First night it was orientation to 50 volunteers that were of the boating community. The second night they took the volunteers in the pools, and they took the kayaks in the pools, and they provided an opportunity for the volunteers to go into the pools and provide assistance to the veterans. On Friday morning, they took the volunteers and the veterans and the kayaks out onto the canal, and they gave the veterans an opportunity, veterans and patients, an opportunity to go down the canal. Wonderful, wonderful activity. And it takes a tremendous amount of volunteers to be able to do that. It takes volunteers not only to teach the individuals how to do the kayaking, but it takes individuals to get them from the bus or from the waterfront down to the boats and put them in the boats. And you know, there are a variety of things volunteers can be engaged in. In May of this past year, Mike Vogel was involved in a bicycling activity, and they went from Walter Reed to Lowe's Motor Speedway. And again, it takes a lot of volunteers to perform that type of activity. You have to have volunteers that suit up the veterans and maybe pass out water or provide them lunch along the way. They would go 70 miles a day, right, Mike? 70 miles a day, and again, it was about a 5 or 6 day trip that they went from Walter Reed to Lowe's Motor Speedway. It involves a great deal of volunteers to perform that activity. So there are a lot of new activities that VA is involved in. Again, they're not new activities for you and I, but these are activities that our veterans are very interested in being engaged in. Bingo is still there, but we are providing a lot of activities that a lot more activities than just the bingo. So veterans need resources and need assistance in a great variety of ways. Last year alone, they provided $59 million in cash and item donations. So it's not just the volunteer assistance, it's also assistance in donations as well. And Lily provided a great deal of assistance to the Indianapolis VA. It has been said the power is in the ask. And so I'm asking you today to think of ways that your organization might be involved in providing service to veterans. As they did 62 years ago, we are asking you to see how it is that you might be able to mobilize your volunteers and your support to provide service to veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I don't know what we would do in VA. Yes, please. I don't know what we would do in VA without our wonderful volunteers. They serve in so many, many ways. They certainly help us as chaplains to assist folks to our worship services, and they help at the national cemeteries with interment sometimes. Many of our retired military chaplains assist us with veterans who don't have their own pastor, perhaps, their own rabbi. They assist us in many, many ways. And what will we do without our wonderful volunteers? If your organization has members that would like to become a volunteer, we have a volunteer chief at every VA medical center, and you can simply call and ask for that person, and they would be glad to assist your organization and your people as they become active volunteers. So thank you, Laura. Our next panelist is Dr. Craig Dykstra. He is the Senior Vice President of Religion, Lilly Endowment. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. There'll be 3 themes I'm going to weave through my remarks in the next few minutes, and you may want to keep them in mind as I start. They are, first, the importance of care and support for service members and veterans and their families, with an emphasis on families as well. Second, the need for and the power of collaboration among key institutions of diverse kinds, and third, in turn, may help create webs of care and support in local communities for returning service members and their families right where they live. While Indiana is the 15th in the nation in terms of population, it has the 4th largest number of National Guard members. The state is currently experiencing the largest deployment of its National Guard since World War II. Since 2004, the Roudebush VA Medical Center in Indianapolis has treated almost 3,000 Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, a patient population that has doubled nearly every year. The many other problems that deployed service members, returning combat veterans, and their families face elsewhere around the country are prevalent in Indiana as well. In the light of these realities, Lilly Endowment, an Indiana-based foundation, made grants last September to 4 key institutions in order to enhance their capacities to serve our service members and their families as effectively as possible. The Indiana National Guard Relief Fund received $570,000 in addition to previous grants since 2004 totaling $750,000. And these funds are used to assist those Guard members and their families who are facing serious financial difficulties due to their deployments. Crane Technology Incorporated received $400,000 to enable it to pilot a new learning and employment center for veterans. This new center, based at a naval base in the middle of landlocked Indiana, provides veterans who are significantly disabled with comprehensive rehabilitative care and sophisticated job training that enables them to re-enter the workforce. Upon completion of Crane's programs, participants are guaranteed employment at the NSA Crane in Southwest Indiana or with other employees in the state, a coalition of employers who are that are building together to receive these retrained veterans into their midst. Purdue University received $8.9 million for its Military Family Research Institute. This support enables this institute to conduct local and national ongoing research on the problems and issues faced by the families of deployed service members and returning veterans. The grant also enables this institute to provide our Indiana National Guard and a variety of civilian volunteer and professional groups with information, educational resources, training, and some personnel support that they need in order to serve and care for military families in every Indiana county before, during, and after deployment. As the only university-based institute of this kind in the country, the Military Family Research Institute is also a national clearinghouse on research and programs that address the needs and concerns of military families. Finally, the Roudebush VA Medical Center in Indianapolis received a $9.9 million grant from the endowment to establish a new seamless transition integrated care clinic, to build a 28-suite comfort home to house families of injured service members, to provide regular retreats for returning combat veterans and their spouses, and, as you mentioned, to host the National Veterans Golden Age Games, which come to Indianapolis next month. When Lilly Endowment made these grants last fall, it did so in order to help a key group of fellow citizens in the state of Indiana. We recognize that these service members and their families have been making great sacrifices, and they deserve the support not only of our government and its institutions, but also of their neighbors, especially those in local communities best prepared to provide the personal welcome, care, and support that our service members and their families very much need. Further, we made these grants knowing that the well-being of these citizens is important for the well-being of our state, its neighborhoods, cities, and rural communities, its businesses, industries, and professions, its civic, educational, cultural, religious, and philanthropic life. These people bring many gifts to our communities, and such gifts cannot be squandered by any community that seeks to thrive. We made our grants to a diverse group of institutions because we believe that only in that way could the multiple kinds of needs facing service members, and especially their families, be addressed. Each of these institutions is able to provide services and assistance that the others cannot. Even more importantly, however, by working together, these four institutions can do a great deal more than any one of them could possibly do independently. When Lilly Endowment made these four grants, we explicitly informed each of our grantees that we would be making grants to the others simultaneously. We made each aware of what the other would be doing, and we asked each of them to collaborate as much as possible with one another. When we began our initiative, we discovered that with some significant exceptions, our grantees operated largely independently of one another. While some people in some of these institutions knew, or at least knew of, a few people in the others, they frankly knew little about each other's work, capacities, or personnel. Now I'm happy to report all four of them are working collaboratively with one another in ways they all feel are strengthening each other's work considerably. They are proactively offering and drawing on each other's resources, personnel, and best practices. They are offering some of their key services at common sites in order to make it easier for service members and their families to gather access to them. They are referring their clients to each other. And together, they are recognizing unmet needs and creating new, more effective programs. As these four institutions have begun to work collaboratively, a still larger community of concern and action is being mobilized. Representatives of multiple additional institutions of a variety of kinds are starting to gather with these four grantees to analyze the broad range of issues and to develop new strategies for addressing them collaboratively. Their idea is to create, over time, a statewide infrastructure of support for service members and their families that involves governmental, corporate, and nonprofit healthcare, educational, workforce development, social service, and community institutions in Indiana, including religious institutions. Lilly Endowment is pleased that we have been able to play a role in enhancing the capacities and quality of service of each of the four institutions we've funded. We will be even more gratified, however, if it turns out that we can be a catalyst for the collaboration of a still larger community of institutions and persons involved in serving and supporting those who are giving so much in the context of their military service. And we hope that what we and our grantees learn through this process will generate some important new insights and provide examples of good practice that you and others will find of value in your own good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dijkstra. What a wonderful, wonderful work the Lilly Endowment has done for so many years. Your organization may be similar to the Lilly Endowment, and if it is, you certainly have a model before you of how an organization such as yours has been able to partner with a government institution to provide care that often we are limited in being able to provide by law. But a community organization like Lilly Foundation can certainly help, and you have, and we are so very, very grateful. Thank you, sir. Our next panelist is Catherine Dunlap. Catherine is a member of the St. John's Episcopal Church, and you might ask, well, this is wonderful to see what a government institution can do, and now what an organization like the Lilly Foundation can do, but what can a local church do? Catherine's going to tell us.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to highlight our program. This is the story of McGuire Outreach Ministry. We believe it illustrates how a willingness to make a commitment to the hard work of collaboration on the part of our member congregations, the American Red Cross, and McGuire VA Center is central in bringing compassionate support to those veterans and their families we serve. I want to emphasize that by saying that from the beginning, the success of this ministry has hinged and hinges today on each of its three major participants' belief that we have a need for each other in order to accomplish our mission. So, given that framework, the basic strategies we follow to carry out our mission include prayer, initial and ongoing evaluation of the problem and needs of the veterans and their families we serve, and engaging, maintaining, and growing our partnerships. Our ministry began with prayer. All major faith traditions pray. St. John's, where this ministry began, has a long tradition of prayer for welfare of those serving in the armed forces. But it is also part of our tradition in the Episcopal Church and our worldwide communion to pray the kind of prayers that will lead us to discern how God is calling us to love and serve, how we are being called to action. We believe that call came when, in 2005, St. John's received a request from the Red Cross by way of ACTS, another collaborative interfaith service agency in Richmond, of the need for volunteers and programs to support patients and their families on the polytrauma unit at McGuire. St. John's formed a task group and met with Camille Smith, then Director of Armed Forces Emergency Services for the Richmond chapter of the American Red Cross, to obtain an initial overview of these problems and needs. This and subsequent meetings at McGuire with Tom Reed, Assistant to Chief of Voluntary Services, and other staff revealed that many, but not all, patients on polytrauma are veterans being treated for multiple catastrophic injuries sustained in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Their families, spouses with young children, parents, siblings, leave and sometimes lose their homes and jobs to travel to Richmond to be at the bedside of their loved one. We saw that while the medical treatment and rehab on polytrauma was phenomenal, there existed a need not only for additional activities, but for new, more specialized, structured respite activities for the patients and their families. Activities that took into account the special needs, medical needs, and circumstances of the patients, and particularly their family members. Family members who experience the stress of being at the bedside of a severely injured, oftentimes emotionally fragile, and at times physically disfigured loved one, day after day. Coupled with this was the lack, as far as we could determine, of any timely developed specialized volunteer screening, orientation, and training program, particularly for groups such as faith congregations who wanted to provide such activities. Both the hospital volunteer programs at that time and the Red Cross volunteer programs at McGuire were geared along traditional lines, catering to individuals who want to donate usually a few hours a week at the hospital doing very needed activities, but not specialized group activities. Secondly, we agreed there was a need for additional financial support for family members who travel long distances to be at the bedside of their loved one, as well as some needs for patients and families that fell outside of what the hospital could meet quickly, such as toiletry items, laundry detergent, baby diapers, clothing, shoes. McGuire Outreach Ministry set out and continues to address these needs through providing a ministry of presence and relief through our respite activities. Access to polytrauma was our first hurdle to accomplishing this. McGuire offered access only through their training program, which was a general volunteer training program held one morning, one time a month. A few of our members were able to make this training, and take it, but most of the individuals who really wanted to invest into this effort were 9 to 5 working adults who could not. But negotiation and collaboration between St. John's, the Red Cross, and McGuire yielded an agreement. St. John's volunteers could begin hosting socials on the polytrauma unit under the sponsorship of the Red Cross as Red Cross Special Events volunteers. The General Red Cross Orientation Program was held in the evening at St. John's, and we were able to begin our work. We have since proceeded and continue to collaborate among our growing number of member congregations with ARC and with McGuire to refine and specialize the training for ministry volunteers to improve and expand services to the patients and their families. Our ministry is directed by coordinators at each member congregation in consultation with its rector and vestries, and in some instances, the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia. Each congregation shares jointly in program development and planning through its coordinators and through joint quarterly meetings. Respite activities are carried out by volunteers in each parish directed by their coordinator. As to the need for additional financial support to patients and their families, McGuire Outreach Fund was established in 2006 as a result of a serendipitous $1,200 donation from St. James's Episcopal Church, and over $7,000 has been donated or granted to the fund since that time. As per its guidelines, the fund provides for patients and family needs that cannot be met or fall outside the parameters of the hospital and other assistance programs. Once again, the Red Cross served as our partner, as our referral source through their VA/VS voluntary service rep at McGuire, Sandy Van Buskirk. The McGuire Fund is maintained and coordinated by St. John's McGuire Outreach Coordinator. However, members share in decision-making concerning the fund, and all ministry volunteers participate in buying needed items and delivering them to patient and family members.
Thank you, Catherine. What a wonderful work. Absolutely wonderful. Obviously, Catherine and her team actually work very closely with the interdisciplinary team at the McGuire Polytrauma Center. I'm sure you work with other volunteers and with our case managers with who are primarily social workers. I see Kristen Day with us today. She's our Director of Social Work at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And Kristen leads a team that works with the polytrauma centers and our military healthcare facilities like Walter Reed and Bethesda to ensure the seamless transition as a veteran or a warrior transitions from that military healthcare to VA. And then we have the partnership with Catherine and with folks like the McGuire Outreach Ministry. What a wonderful, wonderful work. Thank you so much. We have just a few minutes, about 5 minutes, that we can take some questions. Are there any questions, comments for our panelists? Yes, sir.
One concern I've got, I've been through, was badly wounded in Vietnam and went through all of the training, both military and the VA. And I represent a group that is working in McGuire VA Hospital. We're called the Families of the Wounded. And one of the things that has concerned me is once these people are discharged from McGuire, and the ones particularly who kind of fall through the cracks and they're not retired from the military and they go to other veterans hospitals or other communities, there is a shortage, let's say, of coordination with the places where they need to go. And to help them transition better into the communities, I don't know what the answer is, but it would be helpful if they had some way that they could have somebody to contact them when they reach their home, whether it's where they were from originally or whether it's a new place that they're going to settle, to help them to make that transition, to overcome their disabilities. And the family needs the transitional experience just as much as the patients themselves do.
They truly do, and you're absolutely right. We're very grateful that Kristen Day and the case managers help us with that issue. It is a very tough need because often they live in very rural areas. they are not necessarily close to even a VA outpatient clinic. So it's a challenge as they return. I'm sure Kristen takes note of that, and we all do, and thank you for your comment. But it is a great need, and you're absolutely right. Tell us the name of your organization again.
It's called Families of the Wounded Fund.
Families
And we,
of the
unfortunately,
Wounded
we
Fund.
we can help with those who are combat wounded and their families. We help the families primarily. We started out giving a $25 gift certificate and a free pizza to these families, and we're now giving $6,000 per family. And it helps a great deal because these families are giving up employment and they're coming from all over the United States and the territories.
Right.
And we've helped over 170 families so far. And
Wonderful.
it's one of these things that because of a lot of them have been to Germany to meet the patients coming in, and they go to Walter Reed or to Bethesda, spend a lot of time up there, use all their available savings up, and so by the time they reach the polytrauma unit at McGuire, their resources.
Their financial resources are pretty much spent, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
Yes, indeed. Kristen, you want to comment, and then we'll come back to you, sir.
Yes, just a quick comment. The VA, the Department of Labor, and several other federal, state, and local organizations are pulling together a national resource directory so that there will be one repository of all of these different agencies, individuals, public, private, local resources for veterans and others, and that will have a national launch campaign in September.
In September. And what's it called again?
It's called the National Resource Directory. And it's,
National Resource Directory, I believe.
you'll be hearing a lot about it as we stand it up. But right now, there are 11,000 organizations already in it through disability.gov that the Department of Labor has created, and we're standing on top of that, the additional resources that have come to light to help.
If you would like to know more about the resource directory, please see Kristen afterward, or you can talk with Mr. Darren Selnick, who will be on the program a little bit later. Darren will be glad to talk with you also. I think we have time for maybe one more. If not, yes, sir.
Can we assume, a question for the Lilly Foundation, can we assume that there is access through the Purdue University website of information and knowledge that they are gathering?
Yeah, the Military Family Research Institute has a website. With our funding, they're redesigning it. It'll be a much more fulsome and navigable resource that'll be full of information that'll be available to anybody. And I think you can, I think it's mfri.org. But if not, you can just go to Purdue and find it there, or just Google Military Family Research Institute. It'll take you there.
Thank you. Let's give our panelists another hand. Thank you for joining us today. Our next panel will be discussing snapshots of success, and our moderator is Mr. Mark Johnson. He is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Special Needs Programs, Office of Community Planning and Development with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Keith, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. My responsibilities at HUD are to work with populations of special needs, including homeless persons, persons with HIV/AIDS, and veterans. HUD does reach out to veterans either directly or through nonprofit and our other partners every day. To reach out in a coordinated way, a number of years ago, we created something called the HUD Veterans Resource Center. It connects HUD with veterans to help address their housing needs. We also have a website to highlight special things that veterans ought to know about as they seek different housing issues or seek to resolve their housing issues. HUD-Vet has also worked within the department over the last year or two to help make sure that large mainstream programs are available to veterans. For instance, the Section 8 program, which is a very large voucher program that's administered throughout the country, and the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program, are two of our very largest programs at HUD, where we have encouraged all of our local partners that receive those funds to consider using them to help serve veterans. Our mainstream programs at HUD represent over $20 billion, and so that impact can have a large impact locally. Many local organizations that we have in this country, nonprofits especially, really would like to create specialized local programs specifically designed to serve veterans, such as the Maryland Center for Veterans Education and Training that we'll be hearing from very shortly. McVet is the short nickname that we all amiably refer to it as, is a wonderful project in Baltimore that I've had the opportunity to visit on a number of occasions. We've actually held trainings out there for other organizations serving veterans to see how it can be done well. So I'm looking forward to hear their presentation today. It really is a national model about how you can use housing resources and resources for needed services, such as job training, all together to effectively serve veterans. Because of successes such as those from McVet and many other organizations that we fund across the country, and we fund over 7,000 different local homeless providers, we've been able to get increased funding for homelessness in the recent years. The President has consistently asked for an increase since 2001, and because of that request and the great support that we've received from the Congress, our budget has increased by 50% since 2001. This year we are at $1.7 billion. We just announced the availability of $1.4 billion of that in a single program competition that was just released through the Federal Register, something called Continuum of Care, which helps address the various needs that homeless persons have. The continuum calls on communities to decide how best to use HUD homeless resources locally. Virtually every single city and county in America have a local continuum of care. In fact, there are about 3,900 cities and counties participating actively in this program and process. To be competitive for the funds, a community must actively collaborate locally with all the relevant stakeholders. So we ask very specific questions about to what extent are faith-based and other nonprofit providers at the planning table to help decide how those funds are going to be used locally. We also ask a question about veterans. Which veteran organizations are specifically involved in the continuum of care to make sure that the needs of veterans are addressed locally? Through continuums, we've been able to fund and operate many, many projects that serve veterans. This past year, we awarded over $900 million to over 3,700 projects that have specifically identified that among the populations they will serve, veterans is one of those. And nonprofits are really the driving engine within the continuum of care process locally. Nonprofits are at every meeting. The vast majority of our funds go to nonprofit community organizations. This year, over 600,000 homeless people will be benefited by HUD's project funding because of nonprofit-operated projects. So while a lot of our money goes to cities and state agencies, the vast majority of our funds actually go to faith-based and other nonprofit groups. In fact, over 130,000 of these clients will be receiving benefits and services from faith-based local providers that HUD funds. HUD collaborates not just with these communities, which are absolutely vital, but with our federal partners to make sure that these local programs really work well at the community level. For instance, we've been operating several jointly funded federal initiatives over the last 4 or 5 years under the leadership of President Bush. HUD and the VA, for instance, have had a long-standing relationship in operating a project to serve people living on the streets. HUD and the Department of Labor have a similar project to reach out where HUD provides the housing and these other agencies provide the needed services, such as job training and case management. Nonprofits help run those projects locally in terms of providing the housing. We are now rolling out, as Secretary Peake referred to, an even larger joint initiative, this one between HUD and the VA. The Congress provided us 10,000 vouchers this year. HUD is providing the vouchers and the VA is providing the needed clinical and other services such as case management to help make sure that these homeless veterans get all the services they need while we also place them in permanent housing. The President was so impressed with this program that he asked of the Congress for next year an additional 10,000 vouchers. I've worked on the issue of homelessness for 25 years, and I've never seen this level of focused attention, frankly, on any population as I have in the last 2 years. And I'm very heartened that that focus is on veterans. In closing, I just wanted to say that HUD has a very long-standing and strong relationship with nonprofit organizations to help make a difference at the local level. And if you are currently serving veterans, I commend you. And if you haven't yet, but you're interested, I really urge you at the local level to become engaged, because they certainly can use your help. Thank you very much. And our next presenter is John McWilliams from the Department of Labor, a counterpart and a peer of mine. John?
John called in sick today, and us Army people know how to rise to the occasion. We call it contingency operations. And so what you're looking at, eyewitnessing today, is a contingency operation in progress. Glad to be here. Glad to have served. Glad to be an American. Glad to be here with you, and glad to be here for the reason that we're here. The Veterans Employment and Training Service of the U.S. Department of Labor is responsible for helping veterans make the transition from the military to good civilian jobs and for protecting their employment rights and benefits. Service members' civilian job rights are protected through the administration of the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act and the investigations of complaints. Transition services for separating service members are provided through employment workshops that focus on helping service members build a plan to find a civilian career. Employment services for all veterans are provided through America's public workforce system, where veteran employment specialists provide assistance and specialized services to veterans. Homeless veterans receive occupational, classroom, and on-the-job training, as well as job search and placement assistance, including follow-up services through 91 grants. Veterans with barriers to employment are served through 12 grants that assist targeted groups and ease their transition into unsubsidized jobs. The Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, better known as HVRP, provides employment training and supportive services to assist in reintegrating homeless veterans into meaningful employment within the labor force. The program is focused on helping homeless veterans reenter the workforce. Funds are awarded through competitive grants. Funds are also awarded through a process to a variety of organizations, state and local, workforce boards, nonprofits, community-based organizations, many of which are faith-based organizations. The process awards a base year with 2 option years, so they effectively are 3-year grants. The grantee services leverage federally funded housing and mental health programs. And that is really the strength of it. Problems have no boundaries, but government oftentimes has organizations with sectors of action. And what this group is able to do is cross boundaries to get the job done in collaboration with HUD, VA, HHS, and other organizations. HVRP is making a difference in reducing the number of homeless veterans in America. The program is successful in reducing the numbers, and in terms of employment outcomes, for one of the most difficult populations to serve. It's also cost-effective. This past year, we had an entered employment rate of 65%. 65% of those homeless veterans being served by grantees enter employment. For regular veterans who are not homeless, who go into the workforce system seeking employment, their employment rate is 60%. So what we've demonstrated is with intensive services and attention to the clients, we're able to eclipse the 60%. Of course, our goal upcoming is going to be around 66 to 67% for the coming year. Now, even more impressively, it had a retained employment rate of 64%. That's what we're really after, chronic homelessness, to reduce recidivism. Now, the average hourly wage is about $10.50 an hour. The cost per placement is just over $2,300. HVRP supports the President's goal of ending chronic homelessness. Initiated in 1987, the program has doubled over the past 6 years, and it is now at about $24 million, serving 15,000 participants. Those grants were awarded just the 1st of July. This year, we awarded more than 22 million grants to 91 grantees in 34 states and the District of Columbia to help deliver employment assistance to more than 15,000 veterans. I'd like to take an opportunity just to give you a little view of how the trend has been. What we've actually done since 2002 is we've increased the amount of dollars, we've increased performance, and we are continuing to do that. Now, I would like to briefly mention one of our most successful grantees, the Maryland Center for Veterans Education and Training, which was mentioned. McVet is a longtime recipient of our funds, and as I mentioned, these are competitive grants. So McVet has really been successful for a good number of years. They currently have 196 veterans enrolled in employment services. Today, I am pleased to introduce one recipient of these services, Milton Brown. Mr. Brown was born in LaGrange, Georgia, and raised by both parents who are now living in Costa Rica. He served in the Army from 1982 to 1984, and then 3 years in the reserves. He holds a BS degree in computer science, and after completing college, he was employed for 10 years by Cone Mills Corporation as a manager of computer services. He has been at McVet since January of this year. He is in transitional housing and is receiving educational assistance and job skills training via our program. He will attend A+ and network certification programs in a couple of months. Then I am sure he'll be followed by successful placement and employment. Mr. Brown, I thank you for your service to America, and I now turn the podium over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Milton Brown. I'm truly grateful and very fortunate to be a student at the Maryland Center for Veterans Education and Training. I'm honored and pretty amazed to be speaking here to you today. I've been asked to tell you a little about myself, how I came to be at McVet, how it is today, and how I hope it to be in the future. I'm a proud veteran of the United States Army and Army Reserve. I used my Montgomery College fund to earn a bachelor's degree of computer science at Appalachian State University. After college, I was employed at a prominent North Carolina textile company where I became manager of computer services for the largest denim plant in the world. I took graduate classes at North Carolina A&T State University. I have traveled to Canada, Mexico, Colombia, Jamaica, the Virgin Islands, and the Dominican Republic. But 6 months ago, I lived in a tent in freezing weather in the mountains of North Carolina. I was homeless, helpless, hopeless, and unemployable. I was suffering from chronic major depression and a severe long-term drug and alcohol problem. I also suffered from a hepatitis C infection. I was completely isolated and withdrawn from my friends, my family, and society in general. I was barely able to communicate and was unable to function as normal people do. My life had become unmanageable. I had been homeless for 8 years. I had been in and out of shelters, jails, prisons, hospitals. After being laid off from my job, I lost a sense of who I was. I was overcome with a disabling bout of clinical depression, which contributed to a year-long drug and alcohol binge, which consumed my severance pay, my savings, my car, my home. I had struggled with clinical depression since college. I had many episodes which required treatment, including therapy, medication, and hospitalization. My drug and alcohol use started at the age of 13. By age 15, I was using marijuana and alcohol daily, and that daily use continued for the next 30 years. During my Army service, I started using cocaine. My cocaine usage progressed over the years to the point where I was a frequent IV user. I regularly used LSD, speed, and ecstasy also. But by the grace of God and through the help of McVet, it's no longer like that. Today I'm clean and sober and have been in recovery for almost 6 months. I no longer have a desire. Thank you. I no longer have a desire to use drugs and alcohol. I feel good today. I know there's a better way to live. For the first time in my life, I'm experiencing life without the use of drugs and alcohol. It feels good. And, you know, this change is due to the combination of services I have received at McVet. First, McVet provided me with immediate housing to start my recovery. More importantly, McVet offers me long-term, safe military structured housing for up to 5 years. This allows me the time to benefit from the treatments for the underlying causes of my homelessness. I've completed the first platoon phase of the program, which is a basic training-like emergency shelter where I became acclimated to the McVet. I'm now in transitional housing as a member of 4th Platoon and currently work as a vet guard helping provide security for our facility. I'm a willing and dedicated participant in both the Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous programs. I have attended at least one meeting a day since coming to McVet, giving me about 200 meetings in 175 days. I have a mentor from McVet, I have a sponsor, and I have a home group. I do 12-step work. I meet regularly with my sponsor. I do service work in my home group. I'm rebuilding a relationship with God as I understand Him. My recovery is also enhanced by McVet's therapeutic community, where addicts help other addicts. I've also completed the first phase of an outpatient treatment program at the Baltimore VA. I attended classes on recovery and group sessions for 3 months. In the second phase, I will be attending weekly group sessions with an addiction therapist. I also attend daily classes on recovery and addiction-related topics at McVet. All my current health care issues have been addressed in the short time I've been at McVet. I've received a comprehensive physical, an eye exam, prescription eyewear, and dental care. I have also received a liver biopsy, a sonogram, and various tests to evaluate the status of my hepatitis C. Next week, I will be starting interferon treatments for the hepatitis infection. My mental health has greatly improved. Having battled clinical depression for most of my adult life, I feel that it is as much a cause of my homelessness as my drug and alcohol addiction. Today, I can honestly say my depression is in remission. The apathy, worthlessness, and hopelessness that I felt for the last 10 years have been replaced with a new sense of hope and optimism. I once again take medication. I regularly see a psychologist on site at McVet. More importantly, I am abstinent and living a healthy, balanced lifestyle in a safe, therapeutic community. My work as a vet guard gives me a sense of confidence and responsibility. It also helps me with my social interactions. It gives me a sense of accomplishment to give something back to the organization that has so freely helped me. I hope to continue at McVet until I am once again a productive member of the workforce, my family, and my community. After becoming gainfully employed, I hope to return to school and finish my graduate degree. As my recovery progresses, I plan to become an advocate for other homeless people that suffer from both addiction and mental illness. I will help to educate the public that the dually diagnosed can recover with help with programs like McVet. My speaking here today is proof that the McVet program has given me a second chance at life. I never dreamed that such a profound change in me was possible in 6 short months. I now believe that even greater accomplishments are in store for me in the future if I continue to follow the path that McVet is teaching me. The Maryland Center for Veterans Education and Training truly changes the lives of many troubled veterans. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Pete Doherty. I'm the Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs, but that's just a title. My real job is I'm the Director of VA's homeless programs, which is, if you're lucky enough to work for the government and you get a job like this, it becomes a passion. I want to tell you a little bit about what the VA does, very briefly. But I want to give you a sense of what we do and what we partner in. Obviously, our last speaker talked about one of the great ways that government partners. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Veterans Affairs all have an influence and a stake at what happens at McVet's. And that stake at McVet's is what happens. And what happens at McVet's is what Mr. Brown tells us about. I'm also very happy that if we actually look at that issue of veterans who come back to employment, we would also find that my guess is there's 1,000 or more of them work every day at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And so when people come from hopelessness and find hope, their lives obviously change. One of the things Mr. Brown just said, which was so true, is that his life, for the first time in an unaltered chemical state, gave him an opportunity to live in a way that he didn't know that he could live, and he said he enjoyed it. He liked living that way. And that's what these programs are about. And very briefly, let me tell you a little bit about the VA and the VA's involvement. As the national issue of homelessness became on the scene in the 80s, the Department of Veterans Affairs started a little pilot program in 1987. From that very beginning, part of that was to work with community groups and organizations in a contract care program, and also to expand domiciliary care services specifically to homeless veterans. The bubble broke, if you will, in 1992 when Congress authorized the Homeless Service Providers Grant and Per Diem program. That was a program that for the first time gave VA the opportunity to award grant funding. As those of you who are familiar with VA know, we don't do very much in the way of grants at VA. We're a direct service provider by and large. But the tenets of that legislation was very, very good, because it recognized that this program, to be successful, needed to recognize the skill and the knowledge and the judgment that was found in community and faith-based providers. And so from the very, very beginning, this program took that on. McVet's, which was talked about today, was one of those original programs that got funding under the Homeless Providers Grant and Per Diem program. And as my good friend and colleague Mark Johnston pointed out, that probably the most significant breakthrough is that transitional housing program has continued to grow, is now the opportunity for us to offer permanent housing with supportive services to veterans who need that kind of assistance to get on with their lives. We've known from the very beginning that this is about partnership. It's about people. At the Department of Veterans Affairs, we provide health care services to more than 100,000 veterans who come to us in need of health care services each and every year. It's about money. In government, we talk about money. We provide We are expected to provide about $1.8 billion in health care assistance to homeless veterans this year, and we will spend over $300 million in specialized programs such as our grant and per diem program for veterans who are homeless. It's about the benefits that veterans receive. In the VA, obviously, we are a large health care provider, but we're also second only to Social Security Administration, the nation's largest provider of economic benefits. We provide benefits to more than 2.8 million veterans and their family members each month. And among those, we've done a process to expedite and identify veterans who are homeless, and we've provided more than 40,000 veterans who were once homeless who were entitled to benefits, who now, because they have their lives back together, are able to enjoy the benefits that they rightfully earned in their military service. But mostly it's about service, and mostly what today is about service. Many of you in this room are our partners. You're not only our eyes and ears in the community, but you're the hand that often first reaches out to that veteran, and you're the first to touch that veteran. You're also the eyes that see a future that sometimes that veteran doesn't see as well, and you help provide that guide to that veteran. You're also the great assistance to us in our effort. More than 18,000 of you participated in stand-downs, outreach events, 18,000 community people, faith-based organizations came out to offer in many places that first outreach, that first connection to that veteran who may still be homeless and out on the street. And as importantly, more than 9,000 of you have come to what we call our challenge meeting, our community homeless assessment meetings. You help us to identify what services are being provided in that community, whether they're veteran-specific services or not. But you also do a very important function. You tell us what the needs are in that community for homeless veterans. The effort that created the HUD-VASH program was in large part driven in our department, not by what people like Pete Doherty had to say, but what you told us in those meetings. I'm also very happy that at that meeting last year, more than 9,000 people came out to those meetings across the country. More than 5,000 of those were veterans who were homeless at that time or had previously been homeless. So they gave us a real sense of what the needs were and what needed to be. But most of you all, you're the heart. You're the heart of what we do. You're the compassion. You are the ones who care. And as we all know, we know that it's not how much we know, but it's for the veteran out there, it's what they see that you care. And so you are our partner. We care, and you care. And as a result, veterans like Mr. Brown have an opportunity to move on in their lives in a meaningful way. This panel that I moderate this morning deals with people who care. And I'm very, very pleased. You have introduction information in your book, so we'll make it rather brief, but let me invite the panelists to come up. The first is Reverend Michael Boland. Father Mike, as he's affectionately known to all of us, is the administrator and president and CEO of Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago, a great friend of ours. Ann Ray is the chief operating for adult services of Way Station, which is a significant service provider, including to homeless veterans. Ruth Fanning is the Director of Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Services for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And Jim Gibbons is the President and CEO of Goodwill Industries International. Please join me in welcoming them. Father Mike.
Thank you. The Catholic Charities was formed back just a couple of days before the First World War. And so a lot of the programs Catholic Charities has the privilege of serving has been the privilege of serving American veterans going back to 1917. We were asked by the Veterans Affairs to, in the end of 2001, to try to help them deal with the issue of homeless veterans in the United States. And so what we did was try to put a team together. Catholic Charities of Chicago has a full comprehensive service agency, so we serve people from little infants, children, all the way to skilled nursing homes. We obviously work with a lot with homeless populations and people with many different kinds of issues as we try to help them, move them to self-sufficiency, to be able to take care of themselves. So we brought a team together at Catholic Charities to try to be able to help create a vision of what could it be of a place that we could really help homeless veterans come to and try to be able to help them have a place to live. So we knew that housing was a major issue. Secondly, was just the issue of their access to health care. And we were trying to think of things that could be in close proximity, if not right on the campus. We also wanted to have a place where they could receive mental health counseling, job training. We also wanted to be in a very dignified place. So we brought kind of our team together because we wanted the veterans to be treated with dignity and respect, like we treat all of our clients that we serve at Catholic Charities, but in a very special way, trying to reach out to homeless veterans, with the idea that we're going to move them from their present state as much as possible into self-sufficiency. We then created what was the St. Leo's campus, and I can explain that. First of all, today, St. Leo's campus is a place that has 141 studio apartments that are fully furnished for veterans. We just finished in January our first year of operation. And on the campus, there's also a medical clinic, an outpatient clinic for the VA. Catholic Charities built the clinic, and it's right on Halsted Street in Chicago, which is a major thoroughfare. And at the clinic, there's also mental health counseling services available for them. The Department of Labor is also present there to help with employment issues for the American veterans there. The clinic itself serves all veterans in the city and the suburbs, so it's not just exclusively for the residents. So it serves thousands of people in the south side of the city of Chicago and the suburbs. It was great to be able to bring all those services out from different places they had, both the Jesse Brown Clinic in the city as well as the Hines campus. There were, according to our early studies of the VA, there were 9,000 American veterans who lived within a mile of this campus that we now have, but it was, this brought the services directly out to them, so they didn't have to go out. We thought it was so important in this model to create a place that, instead of giving the veterans that were residing at St. Leo's to have to go kind of far away for their services, we brought the services right to them. And we were very blessed at that time to meet Dr. Joan Cummings, who was the VISN director at that time at Hines, and she was the person who really made the commitment because of her 30-plus year history as a doctor caring for homeless veterans, really saw the great need and brought and committed the VA to be able to bring this clinic out there, which has really been a great resource for the people that actually call St. Leo's home, as well as the veterans on the south side. We also have a large garden there. There's a garden with places with a fountain and places for the 5 branches of the military, as well as an eternal flame. We really wanted this to be a very beautiful place where veterans could live and to work out. There are issues they might be having, employment issues, and different places, but in actually a very beautiful setting. We also have a home we work with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, where we also have a residence for those 14 apartments for those with physical disabilities, with a first reference to veterans. So it's a beautiful setting of the campus there. I think one of the challenges for us in doing this was trying to bring many of these entities all together, both the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Labor, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the state of Illinois, and the city of Chicago, which was not at least one of the challenges of trying to be able to put that together. But we also worked very much with the faith-based office, and that was really very helpful. We worked with Derek Selnick, who was actually in the VA, but we were very blessed to work with Pete and with Claude Hutchinson, and they both, it was like everyone was on the same team. So when Senator Durbin came out a couple of months ago to see this site, he looked at the site and met with many of the people there. He thought the real miracle of St. Leo's was that all these entities of the government and faith-based and the city and the state actually all worked together, and actually something happened. But this was a long process, you know, for us to do this. We began in the very early part of 2002 to first of all identify a site, put a plan together, and then to work with all of the various levels of financing in order to try to be able to do that. So St. Leo stands today. We just finished our first year, and I think there's a lot of different kinds of things that we learned. And you know, first of all, it is an incredible challenge to try to put together this kind of financing. The entire project was about $24 million, so to try to put that financing together with our housing corporation, trying to be able to do that with the public and private partnerships. And I think one of the great challenges always was we were always talking about this in kind of as a pilot, things we're trying to do. Until you got to the critical mass that we had people who would commit to financing, it was very much a challenge trying to be able to do that. But we were successful, I mean, with time and with patience, and it's really been a very successful process. But it is one as things as people look towards it. We've met with numerous charities across the United States who have come out to St. Leo's. We tried to work with Pete and with Claude to try to be able to develop this as a model, and this model would be one that could be replicable across the United States. Obviously, the need is great for homeless veterans, and so the waiting list is long at St. Leo's, and so it is absolutely essential a program like this would be able to reach out and to be able to continue. Also, the great work with volunteers. We've had a lot of volunteers at St. Leo's, and we're very blessed with those ones who reach out and are able to help. I think one of the challenges, the last thing I would say is challenges for us, is the trying to find a next stage of housing for the veterans that live there. So as they finish living there after a year or so, they've got their life back together, what's the next stage of their housing? So this is a transitional housing as they move to self-sufficiency, but it is a real challenge to try to find that second stage of housing for them.
Thank you. Ann?
Thank you for the opportunity to join you here today. A little bit about Waystation. We're a 30-year-old nonprofit mental health organization that provides community-based services to individuals with serious mental illness and now to veterans. We have locations in the state of Maryland and 4 counties in the city of Baltimore. We generally provide supported employment, supportive housing, outpatient treatment, psychosocial rehabilitation, mobile crisis, and mobile treatment. We have most recently developed some specially designed services for veterans that includes 2 U.S. Department of Labor grants you heard about a little bit earlier, the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program and the Veterans Workforce Investment Program. And our recent addition to our veteran services is our 16-bed grant per diem program located in Hagerstown, Maryland. Waystation's ultimate mission is to promote community integration and recovery for individuals with mental illness. We've learned over the decades that such a goal can only be achieved by true partnership with other public and private agencies. The fragmentation of mental illness itself requires seamless service network. In addition, the intensity of the disease and the complexity of its treatment demand the coordination of as many assets and resources as humanly possible. We have found that the VA has been an exceptional partner for us in being creative and collaborative in the development of our services, and we give credit to our partners that we've been able to develop the services that we have today. The 2 key components of our program development has been our partnerships and then also our use of current research. One of the things that we have to say is that the VA actually has been a very true partner in our development of our services. And I'm looking around the room and I see a couple of faces. These are individuals who spent several years working with us in developing our services. answering the phone, answering the questions that we have as we learned about the grant and per diem program and what it took to finance the services. So we feel very strongly that the results of this partnership speak for itself. Our 16-bed housing program in Hagerstown was designed and implemented and is monitored through a collaboration of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the University of Maryland, Shepherd Pratt Health Systems, the U.S. Department of Labor, Dartmouth Psychiatric Research Center, and the VISN 5 VA Mental Illness Research Education and Clinical Center. And actually, each of those partners has a role in either the monitoring of our services, helping us with our program development, or helping us with our program evaluation. And we've been able to draw upon this partnership to design and submit for a second 27-bed program that is designed to support women veterans, and depending upon capacity, also to then focus on our Afghan and Iraqi veterans. So we feel very positive about our partnerships, but we also want to share that by reaching out and developing this comprehensive partnership, we've also been able to initiate some real systems change within the state of Maryland. As we all are aware, there's often fears and concerns about cost shifting as we look at developing partnerships with each other. But because of the work that we've done with the VA and the work that the VA has done with Waystation, we've actually been able to develop within Maryland 2 models of systems change that really are true partnerships. The first model is a capital sharing model. For our 16-bed house in Hagerstown, the state of Maryland actually contributed 75% of the capital to develop that house. In our second 27-bed house that is in the process of being designed, the state is considering a 52% contribution of the capital funding. So for both of these programs, the state of Maryland has been a key contributor. Our second model is resource sharing, and the other element to this is that we have the state of Maryland agreeing that we can use group home housing structures that the state pays for to provide services to veterans that the VA is providing some of the staff support. So veterans who need 24-hour availability are able to be housed in a state-funded group home but supported by the VA. The other program development element that we have looked to is some of the national research around best practices for mental illness. And we've looked to what are called evidence-based practices. There are 5 that SAMHSA has identified: supported employment, family psychoed, illness management and recovery, integrated dual disorder treatment, and assertive community treatment. Waystation is implemented, or is in the process of implementing all 5, and we're taking the elements of 3 of these practices: supported employment, illness management and recovery, and integrated dual disorder treatments into the housing programs that we're developing. So we're bringing those principles in and working from those models within those houses. I'm going to cut a little short. I have lots of description about those evidence-based practices. I just want to close with a story. And I think that the story talks about why Waystation has gotten involved with what we're doing. Doug was one of our most challenging clients in our history of our organization. He was a Vietnam veteran, 100% service-connected disabled, schizophrenia, and alcoholism. It was a revolving door between the Martinsburg VA Medical Center, the Springfield State Hospital in Maryland, Waystation, and jail. Oftentimes jail because he assaulted the staff that are trying to support him. We couldn't keep him in housing. We couldn't keep him in the housing programs that Waystation offered. We couldn't find a landlord in Frederick who would rent to him. So we turned to the VA as one of our partners to see what we could do. We were able to, with the VA support and his guardian support, actually purchase a condo for him so that we were able to provide services to him in his home. So after years of this revolving door, he spent the next 10 years of his life actually living in the community, very few hospitalizations, no jail time. We look back at Doug with a lot of pride. This was a man who homeless many times in his life, who we can look at as being a contributor to our way station community. We have a classic story of a time when we were trying to expand our housing program. We had some individuals that were tentative about selling us their property. They were very concerned about people with mental illness living there. We were trying to negotiate with them. They were left alone in an office for a little while, and Doug wandered in. Now, Doug, most of the time, I've shared that he has assaulted people. We're a little concerned about what he would do. He actually charmed these individuals, and they agreed to sell the properties, and we were able then to expand our housing program. So we look back with Doug as someone who's contributed to our community very fondly. Doug unfortunately passed away from cancer before we actually were able to finish the housing project, but we feel like he's left us a strong legacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth?
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you. I want to thank all of you for all the work that you do every day to help veterans and others. I've learned a lot from listening to the panelists, and I'm just very appreciative of being here. I want to first begin by telling you a little bit about the VA's Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Program. It's a program that is in place to serve veterans who have service-connected disabilities, and our mission is very simple. It's to help those individuals with whatever services are needed to return to gainful employment. We have a secondary mission, which is equally as important for those veterans who are so seriously disabled that employment isn't a current option. We provide services to help them be as independent in the community as possible, meaning that they can live in the least restrictive environment and depend to the least extent possible on the support of others. We have staff throughout the country in 57 regional offices and an additional 100 out-based offices. We attempt to put the services in each community where veterans reside so that they don't have to seek us out, make it as easy as possible for them. The services that we provide are mostly focused toward employment. Even those independent living services, we hope that as individuals become more independent, they'll be able to start thinking about employment, whether it's working as a volunteer, as we've heard about from so many folks today, or earning a living, having that meaningful activity in their life again. Back in 2005, the VA Voc Rehab Program learned about the VA Faith-Based and Community Initiative Office. Darren Selnick is very persuasive, and we're so happy that he is. He came over and met with the previous director, Judy Caden, and talked to her about the wonderful partnerships that were available through this initiative. Through Judy's leadership, in 2005, we embarked on a pilot with YMCA, and that pilot was launched in 8 of our regional offices throughout the country, so 8 different states. Since the pilot began, we realized that because of the success with YMCA, where we were able to focus on capitalizing on services that YMCA was providing that complemented the VRNE program in ways such as health maintenance, child care, services that veterans desperately needed as they were pursuing their vocational goals. We also learned that YMCA had expertise on their staff to do the similar work that we do, that they were a great resource for us to refer to for additional assistance, and that they are a wonderful employer. We learned through our work with YMCA that the values that faith-based organizations and community organizations have for public service, respect of individuals, reaching out and helping others, are the same kind of values that our service members and our veterans have when they come out of serving our country. Veterans are a group who honor respect, commitment, they're dedicated, they're public servants. And it was a natural match for us to look at faith-based organizations and community organizations as employers for veterans as they re-entered the workforce. Because of the success with YMCA, we expanded our initiative to include all nonprofit and faith-based organizations. Now, we haven't reached everyone yet, but we're working on that. Our project manager is here today, Gina Klaus, and through her initiative, her vision, her passion, and her continued work with Darren, we're expanding this program. I'd like to tell you a little bit about an example of an organization we're working with, and I'm just excited that a member from Goodwill is here on the panel with me. As we expanded, we worked with Goodwill, and as I mentioned, Goodwill, initially we worked with them as a training facility. They provide a lot of training that we took advantage of for veterans to help them reintegrate into the community and in employment. They also had expertise on their staff to do vocational evaluation, extended evaluation. We tapped into that. They became a service provider for us, actually one of our contractors providing services that complemented our staff's services, and they became an excellent employer for us. Through this work, we were able to streamline our process and look at how we could work with other community-based organizations to provide those very important wraparound services, and also tap into veterans' natural inclination for community service and public service and employment opportunities. As an example, I provided all of you with a copy of the Vanguard magazine. It's in your packets, and it talks about our partnership with Goodwill, and it tells an example of a veteran who worked first as a trainee and an intern with Goodwill, participating in their training, a man named Carl. He went through the training, he did quite well, and subsequently became a manager with Goodwill and runs one of their retail stores in the Atlanta area. This is exactly the kind of thing we want to do with all of you. We're trying our best to reach out to community-based organizations and faith-based organizations, and I'm happy to say that you're reaching out to us. If I accomplish nothing else from this chance to talk with you, I want to encourage you to reach out to us. We want to work with you. We want to partner with you. There's so much good work being done to help veterans, and we want to be working in a collaborative way to really take advantage of all the talent and great resources that are out there. I know I'm running out of time. I just wanted to tell you very quickly, I've also provided you with a CD that has a complete orientation to our program. It's one of our primary outreach tools, and I hope that after you watch it that you'll share it with a veteran you may know, or share it with veterans in your organization so they can learn about the VOC Rehab program and all the services that they may be eligible for. Last year, in faith-based organizations, over the last 2 years, I should say, since the pilot kicked off, over 1,600 veterans have become employed in faith-based organizations. We're very proud of that. I'm out of time, but I want to, again, encourage you to reach out to us. I'm going to try to meet as many of you as I can at the break, and I want to really, again, end with thanking you for all that you do. Thank you.
Jim?
Yes.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jim Gibbons with Goodwill Industries International. And Goodwill was founded by a Methodist minister, Reverend Edgar Helms, in 1902. And his mission has resulted in 169 Goodwills across the country, and we're in 14 other countries as well. Through that network of Goodwill agencies, we've served over 1 million people in 2007, and about 8,000 vets from a variety of generations. We're actively involved across many of our Goodwills with very specific veterans programs. I think 72 of our Goodwills have specific programs, but all of our Goodwills really have the capacity and the ability to morph to the needs of their communities. So whether somebody is designated as a vet or not, if that vet is looking for services, Goodwill can be a go-to in that community. With our partnership with the VA in a variety of our Goodwills and the homeless vet reintegration program, I think the real capacity building opportunity we have there is the ability to move best practices from other programs into how we serve veterans, whether it's our extended our deep and rich assessment programs, our job training, our job placement programs. We're able to take those skill sets or organizational capabilities and move those in to programs for the vets. And so I want to just tell a couple of stories that I think are pretty powerful in terms of how that use of those capabilities has been useful in terms of our partnerships and with the VA and throughout our communities and in serving vets. We had one young man who really was discouraged and through brain injury and a variety of disabilities, really had no hope that he would live independently. But through a comprehensive assessment program, simple tools that are out there, keyless locks because he couldn't not lose his keys, technology to help him stay properly, utilize his medicine. All of that has allowed him to move out of his parents' home, move into his own apartment, and he's on his way through work at a Goodwill store to his independence. Another young man, Matthew, after doing things so many of us would never have the ability to be successful in as a special forces unit in Iraq, came back, got out of the Army, went to work. An addiction to both drugs and alcohol took over his life. The loss of his mother, who he was very close to, took him into a tailspin. He became homeless and found his way to a Goodwill. Through the programs and the reintegration programs at that particular Goodwill, Matt was able to pull his life together and is now, through starting his career with Goodwill in a retail store, has moved into being a manager of social programs where now he's serving other vets. It's really through those transfer of knowledge, transfer of best practices that we've been able to use within the Goodwill network that has allowed us to serve vets with what I think is a pretty good placement rate of approaching 75% and retention rates within 6 months of 75% and over 18 months of 68%. I also think what I think is a compelling story, at least at one Goodwill, who's collected the data a little differently, that the vets that they've served have been able to contribute more in taxes after 14 months than the service has ever cost the community. And I think that's a pretty powerful statement, not only in adding dignity to those individuals' lives, but I think more powerfully to us. Many folks want to pay less in taxes. Many folks who aren't working just want to pay taxes and be a contributing member to their society, to their family, and to their community. I think the other VA success and innovation that I'd like to share with you today is a program we have in Rochester, New York. And I think this speaks to the sharing of best practices outside of our network of Goodwills. And this is where the VA was planning to start a call center and a suicide prevention hotline in Rochester, New York. Our Goodwill in Rochester had great call center capability. They had suicide prevention counselors on staff, and that Goodwill has served as a training arm in spinning up the VA operation in Rochester. Also stands ready as their 24/7 backup for the VA in those cases. So I think, really the great and powerful story that Goodwill brings to serving our vets is that ability to share best practices and steal from each other to make sure that we're optimizing our ability to serve vets and then also be able to move organizational skill sets and capabilities from one organization to another. One of the keys to our success is that of collaboration. I think as we go forward to serve the vet populations, the areas that we're particularly interested in are really in women vets and the whole area of TBI. We have a partnership in Central Pennsylvania that's starting now to serve vets with traumatic brain injury, where our role will leverage our commitment and our capability in family strengthening to where other partners are providing some specific services. Ours is to provide the services to family to ensure that the individual is successful through family supports. So Goodwill, founded in faith, a belief in the power of work to garner a person's dignity and independence, a focus on family, and a belief that collaboration with our communities and throughout our communities are key to our success. And we're very excited about ongoing service to our heroes. Thanks.
Do we have any questions? We have a couple of moments. Yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk today about getting homeless vets into transitional health and housing and helping them once they become homeless. The move in a lot of communities is to keep people in housing so they don't become homeless, because there's a certain, you talked about the example of the good things that happened once that person was in his home. If you can keep people, especially people with families, in their homes and work out childcare and other things, that kind of gives you a leg up. Are VA agencies working with other groups to look at the preventative side of homelessness?
Most of you are direct service providers. Maybe you should.
We have, chairs, we have, it's not so much as with the VA, but we do have about 160 apartments. We just try to keep people, if they don't have apartments, to get into apartments. They don't go into a shelter. They stay in the same community or take over their apartment lease and wraparound services. Our experience at St. Leo's is they're all homeless and they come to us. So that program is specifically geared towards that, but our agency has a lot of different other ways of trying to help people sustain them so they don't fall into homelessness, because then it's harder to get them back up. And so, yeah, we do have a lot of wraparound services in order to try to be able to do that.
Our strategies really consistently revolve around outreach and trying to get to where the vets are. So whether that's relationships, with the VAs, we even had one case where a particular Goodwill really forged a relationship with the police department, because there was access through the police department to vets that were at least approaching challenges. So it really is a matter of outreach to try to get to folks before they fall into the gap. And that's another area that we were able to take from other programs, because the Goodwills across the country do a lot of work with ex-offenders, and the way to support folks is to get them before they go deep into personal challenges. So it's that outreach is the key.
And on the VA side, we mostly are reactive, but we do have a mortgage foreclosure prevention strategy. So if you have a veteran who's getting in difficulty with their housing, they're actually eligible in some cases to come and get an additional amount of loan to keep them in the house instead of losing the house on the front end. Other questions? Very good. Well, in that case, I'll introduce Darren Selnick, who is the director of the Center for Faith-Based. Thank you, panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Pete stated, I'm Darren Selnick, director of the VA Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, and an Air Force veteran. And as an Air Force veteran, it is my honor and pleasure to make the introduction for the call to action. The call to action may be the most important part of the program, because it is the follow-up and action we do tomorrow that will make the difference in the lives of the veterans we honor today. We are very fortunate today to have for our call to action a man of action, Mike Vogel. He has been volunteering his time and setting an example for others to step up and serve their country by supporting our nation's veterans and their families. Mr. Vogel does that by serving as the VA's 2008 chairman and spokesman for the Department of Veterans Affairs National Salute to Hospitalized Veterans Program. Mike Vogel is a popular young film and television actor, just ask my daughter, and as chairman, leads VA's annual patient recognition program that invites the public to visit and honor veterans treated in VA hospitals and clinics. As a national spokesperson, he represents more than 85,000 volunteers of all ages serving veterans in VA facilities across the nation. He began his acting career in 2001 on the Fox television series Grounded for Life and has appeared in a variety of movies since, including his most recent Cloverfield, released last January 2008. Mr. Vogel became personally involved in supporting veterans after his cousin's husband was killed during military duty in Iraq in 2007. Let's give a warm welcome to Mike Vogel.
How are you? Thank you so much for having me here. This year I've had the privilege of serving as the chairman and spokesperson for VA's National Salute to Hospitalized Veterans Program. And during that time, I've had the opportunity to volunteer my time by visiting veterans in the hospitals, nursing homes, and clinics at several VA medical centers throughout the country. I initially became involved after losing a family member in Iraq, and because I was fueled by a burning desire to help my generation in their moment in history. What I've received in return has felt almost unfair and unequal, for I'm the one who's been blessed and poured into by the patriotism and honor that is instilled in each and every one of our men and women in uniform. I was able to witness firsthand the many needs that exist to support our veterans and the great work being done by faith-based and community organizations such as those gathered here today, and the volunteers in serving those who've served. I've seen and heard directly from the veterans the positive difference that these caring volunteers are making in their lives, whether it's providing transportation to and from the medical facilities, providing social and recreational activities, serving as friendly visitors, or lending caring support. VA volunteers and the faith-based and community organizations they represent are giving of themselves to help serve those who've served. Thousands of American military men and women serve in distant outposts around the world. And so often we refer to soldiers, we refer to them as having served. No matter what their level of involvement in our armed forces, I contend that they have not served but sacrifice. On a recent USO trip to Guantanamo Bay, I had the honor of spending a few days with the 2 F4 Marines. Of the 34 men in that platoon, only 5 of them were of drinking age. Of those 5 commanding officers, they had 4 and 5 combat deployments apiece. Sergeant Dave Willis of the platoon told me, he said, "Mike, I've been married for 3.5 years. Of those 3.5 years, I've spent a total of 7.5 months at home. I'm not complaining, but it's tough." He said, "I've pulled the trigger a lot of times, but I don't lose sleep for anything except for the men that I've lost." And I think it's time that everyday Americans have to feel the burden that has fallen on these men. Every one of these soldiers has crossed the line of not just service, but sacrifice. And as we pray for the safe return of our troops, many Americans are asking, well, how can I honor these men and women? Nothing a citizen can do on the home front will bring them closer to our fighting men and women than volunteering at a VA facility. Now is the time to honor America's veterans by becoming a VA volunteer. Each citizen has contacts with faith-based and community organizations in their local communities, and this is a call to action to become involved in helping to meet the needs of our nation's veterans and their families. Veterans sacrificed and gave their best for our country and for us. Now it's our turn to sacrifice and give our best for them. And I feel that this means making it hurt a bit. All of us can put a flag or a ribbon sticker on our car, and that's great. I'm not discouraging that in the least, but it's time that we venture further. Our daily lives can stand to give of our time to these warriors who have given such great parts of their lives for us. Volunteers fulfill that commitment every day at VA facilities. Please visit our hospitalized veterans and remind them that their sacrifices are cherished. I realized when I became involved with the VA that helping my generation is not even approaching the tip of the iceberg. I have, through this opportunity, fallen in love with an entire past generation of soldiers wrongly, momentarily eclipsed by my generation's fight, but hardly forgotten. To these heroes, volunteers are a crucial part of the care that veterans receive at VA hospitals across the country. They're a link to the community for our veterans, and their volunteer service reminds our veterans that their sacrifices have not been forgotten. Patriotism looks and means different things to different people, but to me it's simple. It's one who is willing to give of themselves, even to the point of momentarily disrupting their everyday routine, if it means easing the burden of our men and women in the armed forces, past or present. So to find out more about becoming a volunteer for the VA, or to find out how your faith-based or community organization can support veterans, please contact Voluntary Service Office at your local VA facility, or go online to www.volunteer.va.gov. And thank you so much for being here today.
Mike, thank you very much for the strong words. Veterans are, they're benefited greatly by your voice and your influence, and their arms are lifted up by so many of the servants that are in this room today. That's what has been on display. Just as promised, you've heard a diversity of approaches, innovative solutions, and tireless efforts to serve those who have served. And so we're grateful again for your presence, and I'm sure you got a good return on your time investment. We certainly did. And as Mike just said, and Darren as well, we'll be judged by what we do tomorrow, and I know we're going to be better in our shop because we were in your company today. So a quick word about what's next, because these events are made more special when we have a bit of time together. You heard so many special speakers. You can see why we didn't want to compromise too much of their time to enable question and answers, which is always a rich time of sharing, and so we regret that, but we wanted to enable you to hear such expert opinion from such a diverse set of vantage points. So we have enabled, following this session, some informal time for you to interact with one another, and to do so over some food and fellowship. So down the hall in the Indian Treaty Room, which is just a remarkable space, beautiful room. It's named the Indian Treaty Room for reasons that escape all of our understanding. No Indian treaty was ever signed there, is what I mean. So, but it is a lovely space. It's the old Naval Library when this building was constructed originally. It also was the space where President Eisenhower delivered the first televised press conference. So it does have a great history of which we're familiar with, but just not sure why we named it that. But there's good food there, and we'll also hear some very special entertainment. Milton Brown's words were so poignant for us, and his organization that he's benefited by, the Maryland Center for Veterans in Education and Training, has brought their choir, an a cappella choir that will treat you, and so you don't want to miss it. So for those of you that need to get back to other jobs, I would ask that you depart the room in that door, actually, and that'll take you to the elevators, which enable you to exit the building. But for all of those of you who can join us for the reception, why don't we exit this door, and you'll have a shorter route to the Indian Treaty Room. So thank you again. Congratulations to all of our speakers, and have a good day. Good job. Thank you very much. Terrific event. Hi. How are you? Thank you. How are you? Very good job. Thank you so much. How are you? Oh, yeah. No worries.
Thank you for inviting me.
Good, I hope so.
I'm gonna go grab it before it goes away. I'll come right back here. Hang on. Oh, all right.
So never got to fly. To get her to realize that she will interview for a job more times than friends throughout their entire lives.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Going to every same passionate program. She would do any job interview, but she'll do it 10 times a week. And she'll get told no 10 times a week. 1,000 interviews, one might happen and one might not. It's hanging in there and being on top of your craft, steps, being, even going beyond college, just to stay involved in class outside of that, private coaching and everything. Because, Anthony Hopkins won an Oscar, and after winning an Oscar, took 6 months off of doing anything and went back into class again. And that's, that, to me, that's what I've seen as the key to people that have careers, being on top of their craft and not just looking for the quick kick to fame to the top, So.
I'm passing words.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Thanks, Laura. Laura.
Thank you.
Well, I always thought I could TV show when people love medical shows. One of our hospital shows, VA Medical.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It could be the young doctor.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm gonna go to the
reception here?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll
Yes.
talk to you in there.
Nice again meeting you. Thanks a lot for all you do.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. We have to go to the, we have actually the tour, the VIP tour of the Senate that has been set up for us, so we'd love to.
What time do you need to do that?
As soon as we can get there, so we're gonna go back